Hey friends, welcome to Make Anything. It's Devin here, and I'm gonna talk a little bit fast because I'm gonna try a rare one-day build. I've spent several weeks back in my hometown in California, visiting friends and family. It was lovely, but now I'm back in Sweden. It's halfway through December and I don't have any Christmas decorations up. So today, we're gonna try to make some quick Christmas decorations. I've already ordered some supplies, so we're part of the way there. Now the goal is just to make something out of it all by the end of the day. It's about 1 o'clock here, so we have like 3 hours before the sun is gone. Winter in Sweden, baby. So, just to set the scene really quickly, this is the front of my house. This is where I plan to create my little display. As you can see, I've got a bunch of rocks that I've stacked up throughout the year. Just my fun little way of meditating. So what I've done is I've ordered a 6-piece solar spotlight set and a bunch of different colored transparent PETG filaments. My idea is to create filters for the spotlights to make them a bit more festive. I think I'm going to take some inspiration from James Turrell, an amazing artist who works with light, by having some front lighting on these rocks and then some lights behind in contrasting colors to just make it look more vibrant. Although, as you can see, the backdrop here is already red, so I'm not sure how colors will look projected against that. We might have to wing it a little bit, but that's the starting plan. So here are my lights, and my initial idea was simply to print a translucent cap that fits over the front and colors the light. Easy enough. But I also noticed that this front piece is easy to remove, and inside we can see that there's just this one tiny LED, and this lens is designed to diffuse and soften that light. However, for our use case, maybe more sharp and direct light from the LED can be used to our advantage since it will cast crisper shadows, which could look interesting. With that in mind, I'll use my calipers to measure all the dimensions that might be useful for either of those designs, and I'll try both my original cap filter idea as well as a replacement for the original lens. With the necessary data collected, we can jump into Autodesk Fusion and start designing. I decided to start with the lens replacement filter first, since it would use slightly less material, and both of these designs are so dead simple that I can show the whole process and hopefully not lose too many of you. As with most designs, there are several valid ways to go about this. I could just extrude 2 circles from the top view, but I'm choosing to do a revolved profile, which means I can sketch out just 1/2 of the shape and then I'll spin it around that vertical center line. This way I can add all those dimensions in a single sketch and then apply the revolve feature to give us our solid form. Nice. I'll finesse the shape just a bit by adding chamfers to the edges for cleaner printing, and then I'll save the mesh as an STL file. Now I can bring it into my slicer and set it up to print solid. As far as filaments for this project, I bought all these different colors of PETG from 3DJake using my winnings from the Thangs weekly competitions. So, thanks for printing my files, people. I ended up getting all these different brands to get a broad range of colors, and it's also a good opportunity to compare the filaments. I'll start with that green, since I've got so much, and I'll be printing it on my Cheedy Q1 Pro, which should have no problems with PETG. Although I did want a smooth bottom surface rather than the bumpy texture of the default Q1 build plate. And I only had this bamboo lab plate, which is slightly larger, but since I'm printing small parts in the middle of the build plate, I figured it would still work out fine. Sure enough, a few minutes later, and our part was materialized. It's nice and clean and ready to test out. So I swapped out the original filter of my light, and we have ourselves a green light. Great, that seems to work really well, but let's also prototype the outer cap idea just to compare our options. Once again, we'll do most of the work inside of a single sketch that will later revolve. First, I'll draw in the dimensions of the front of the light itself as a reference, and then I'll draw in the lens cap around that. Our first prototype was 2.4 millimeters thick, so I'm gonna make this one just 1 millimeter thick to see how that affects the quality of the light. Like most traditionally manufactured parts, the light has a slight draft angle, getting wider at the bottom, And that's actually useful here because I can make my lens cap slightly overlap on the sides there so that it hopefully creates a nice friction fit. So I'll revolve that and add my chamfers, orient the part, and it's ready for printing. In the meantime, I began installing the spotlights in my front yard, and I quickly realized that the ground is pretty much frozen solid, making it really difficult to make holes for the stakes. Luckily, I happened to have this insanely long masonry drill bit that I found at a thrift store and bought on a whim, and that's the only way I managed to make a deeper hole. So I was able to get 3 of those lights set up before going back to check on the latest print. Again, it looks great and the fit was snug. First try, all ahead of schedule. So now I just have to wait for the sun to go down. All right, let's switch this on. Nice. Here's the first filter, producing a soft green glow. And the lens cap here is brighter but less green, so there's a pretty direct trade-off between brightness and color based on the thickness of the lens filter. In the end, the texture of the 3D print diffused both of the lights, so the softness and quality looks about the same. So I'm gonna go forward with the external caps, since they'll be easier to swap out, and they definitely won't affect the waterproofing of these lights. I did think the filter could be slightly thicker, and thanks to parametric design, adjusting that is as simple as changing one number, and the model will update itself with that adjustment. Hey, post-production Devin here, and I guess it was so cold that night that my brain froze a bit as well, and somehow I didn't film my setup with the 3 lights behind the rocks and the 3 lights in front. I did manage to print all the different colored filters that night. I just didn't film it. Basically, the effect of the lights against the red shed didn't quite work out, as I kind of expected. So I decided to switch things up a bit the second night, and it ended up looking better. I don't know how this still happens, but it does. Alas, let's continue with the video. Hey friends, it's Devin here with Make Anything on day 2 of my one-day build. Not to say that I failed. In fact, I achieved my goal within like an hour. I made these filters, I put them up, my house was lit, and the neighbors rejoiced. The filters worked great. The lights are maybe a bit too dim for the James Turrell level of lighting I wanted. They're the cheapest solar lights on Amazon, and I get like 4 hours of sunlight, so what could I expect? But nevertheless, they do work. They do look rather nice. That said, I am gonna move the 6 lights just to the front of the rocks and point them at all the rocks instead of trying to light behind them. I just think the effect is greater if I have 6 different colors on 6 different rock stacks. No, but the reason that this became a 2-day project is because, as always, I kind of just expanded the scope of what I was doing, because after seeing how well all these colors worked for light filters on those solar lights, I figured, why not change the color of all my outdoor lights to become even more festive? For example, I've got this other outdoor spotlight, and I created a similar gel system, but I split it up so that you can have 2 different colors shining. Although with the multiple LEDs inside of this thing, it kind of diffuses it all and blends the colors together. But I still think it's a fun idea, and it already inspired some other ideas that I've been doing now. I've also got a bunch of standard outdoor lights that just use these regular E27 bulbs. So I came up with this system that just pops on top and lets you add a color filter to those light bulbs. These are low-powered LED light bulbs, and even after being on all night, they're barely warm to the touch. So I think these are safe enough. They shouldn't be a fire hazard. Knock on IKEA composite wood. I think this is really cool because it's a very quick way to switch out colors on light bulbs without needing those $100 Hue bulbs. And I got extra fancy and made these twisting versions with 2 parts that fit together to make this spiraling ornament style light. I think these look very festive, and it's just a really exciting idea to me. I can actually see this becoming way more complex and becoming whole light fixtures just connected to the light bulb, provided they don't get too heavy. But yeah, some really cool inspiration for me here. And to top it all off, I even added colored lights to my security cameras with these fitted filters that cover the security light. By the way, Anran sent me these C3 security cameras a long time ago, and I've failed to make a video about them for the longest time, so I love these cameras. Been using them for months. They're powered entirely by solar, and they've got Wi-Fi connection, they've got person detection. They're awesome. I genuinely really like these cameras. They're about 50 bucks right now, so pretty good deal. And now I got to make them extra fun with these colored filters. As far as these different colored PETG filaments, well, they all worked perfectly fine. These aren't the most complex prints, but in general, I would say just find the colors you like and buy the cheapest ones. There's a good chance it'll work. The only one that's maybe a little different is this orange Spectrum PETG that's a bit more matte than the others, but they look really good. So now with all of these files, I can tastefully decorate my entire house without having to string up any Christmas lights. I'm pretty excited about that. Let's go make the house a little prettier. As I mentioned a bit earlier, I decided to bring all 6 lights to the front of the rocks. Besides the backlighting not being too impressive, the overall presentation seemed a bit sparse as well, so I hoped this would help tie things together. While still tough, the ground did feel a bit softer today, so I managed to get the lights fully staked down, and I also buried the cables under the gravel just to make it all a bit more tidy. I used smaller rocks to hide the spotlights a bit, as well as to offer some protection in case a rock pile does come tumbling down. With my remaining daylight, I rearranged my stacks a bit, and I also installed my twisty filters onto the overhead lights. I'm not sure if this green and blue combination feels Christmassy enough, but I do like that it dims these bulbs a bit so they don't quite overpower the solar lights. So, finally, here is the completed display. I know, it's nothing crazy, it's no Disneyland, but I would say it's mighty pleasant. And I quite like how the adjacent colors slightly overlap on the rocks, which helps bring out their form. The blue filters ended up kind of just canceling out the original warmth of the light, so I may end up doubling up those filters. And I actually wouldn't mind adding backlights now that the front is more lit up. But all things considered, I'm happy. All right, there you have it. My house is lit up. I thought it was a pretty fun little project. I think it's a nice and tasteful way to decorate my house for Christmas without putting in too much effort. And I can take those filters off and keep the rock stacks lit year-round without being too tacky, I think. I don't know. Let me know what your thoughts are on this project. Was it cool? Was it silly? Am I gonna burn my house down? I love to hear your opinions. Anyways, it's cold out here, so I hope you enjoyed it. And as always, stay inspired. See you guys.